Kia ora whānau and welcome to another episode of Get a Job and Get Healthy with Costas Enterprises. I am your host, Alex Costas. And today I am currently working, but what I thought I would do is I thought I would do a quick episode in relation to what I was talking about before, the top 10 sort of self-help books that I think are really, really good and easy to use, easy to actually learn, as well as this is just like a starter list for people that are just starting out, wanting to sort of flesh out their wings in self-help. So first of all, let's get into all the socials and all that sort of fun stuff. You can reach me via my email, doncostas@gmail.com. That's DONCOSTAS@gmail.com. You can also find me at my website, www.costasenterprises.business.blog. And also you can follow me on at the Kiwi Don on both Twitter and on Instagram as well. You can find my other businesses in the show links before. Another thing that I'm also talking about a little bit later, maybe in about a month, is I've signed up to be a Temu ambassador. So that's going to be really interesting. But yeah, we will go through it and sort of see where we go. And then I'm going to go through these books, give you a little bit about why I think they're good books to go with. And some of these books will also lead on to other books by the artists as well, which aren't included in the list, but are still really, really good and should be looked at as well, especially if you like the style of that author as well. One of the ones on the books is actually two books in one, but they're so short that I consider them to be sort of one book. I have listened to all of these on audiobooks as well, so I haven't had to read these books. But at the same time, I do think they're really beneficial and something that should be quite useful and quite helpful to everyone as well. Again, these books are not in any particular order as well. These are just ones that I've gone through. They're the top 10 that I recommend usually, and I do think people should look at them. They aren't my top 10. Basically, they are just 10 that I've selected. Some of them are in my top 5 books. There's a couple of my top 1 book, which I think everyone should have, and I will go through that as well. But in this particular list, this is just like just a nice starter that we can do as well. So let us start off the list, shall we? I have written these down. I am going to try and do a series of these, so this is just going to be the self-help ones at the moment. There will be others that I will do. That'll be things like entrepreneurial books and money books and debt books and all that sort of stuff. So we'll go through those as well. But this is just a handful of books that I've read over the last sort of 4 years. So the first book I've got here, as I said, these I've numbered them, but they're not actually in any order. They're just numbered for me because I now organise things in lists if I can to make myself easier. The first one is The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck. Yes, I said that right. That is The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck by Sarah Knight. Now, Sarah is a fantastic author. She's quite funny as well. A lot of her books that she's got that are self-help books have slightly offensive titles and swear words in her book. But at the same time, what she's actually putting out into the world is actually really, really helpful and really, really something that you should be thinking about using as well. This is the first book in her series, and I would strongly suggest that if you like her style, listen to her other books. I think there's about 4 or 5 now. I've read about 3 of them. I'm only suggesting this at the start, but I do think it is worth getting her other books as well, because they are really, really helpful. The main reason I suggest these series of books is, so for me, I grew up in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and I get a lot of the references that she's talking about. Like, there are some pop culture references and that sort of things. She does swear in her book as well, and for me, that was like, it woke me up. It made me go, oh, okay, this self-help stuff can be funny too, and it can be done in a way that is actually enjoyable, which is what this is. That's exactly what we're talking about. So, yeah, I think as an intro, it's really, really cool, really, really helpful. And as a series of books, especially the first book, which is The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, there it is very similar. Another guy called Mark Manson, Mark Manson, came out with The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. His book got a lot more sort of play. In fact, it's been made into a movie, I believe. But Sarah's books, I like. I've read both. Okay, I've read both. I find her style much better than Mark's, in my own opinion. Some people love Mark, like his was a #1 bestseller for ages. So it's not like there's no particular reason of why it's good and why it isn't good. I really, really liked those books myself. So yeah, I found it quite helpful. She touches on some important factors, and for me, when I was, I was a victim myself of basically, I was in a codependent relationship with my mother, and when I first started my sort of journey of changing and my journey of counselling and stuff like that, this was the first real book that I read in regards to that, and it was a great segue. It was a great entry point into the stuff that I was trying to work on. And again, this is all based on me. This is all of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about is my own opinion as to why I think. Completely up to you. You can have your own opinion. Some people like someone like Rachel Hollis, who does things like Girl Stop Apologizing and all that. I've read a lot of her books as well. It's kind of like it's just a different style, but in essence, a lot of the principles can be used for all sorts of these books that I'm doing. But at the same time, I really, really liked Sarah's style for this. Okay, so the second book is The 5 Love Languages. Now, this is my #1 referral book. I think everyone should have this book. I think the amount of times that this book has helped me after reading it only once has been crazy. Like, we are talking quite easily, it's one of those books that if you focus on what it's trying to say, and if you do the things it actually says, work with your partner and all that sort of stuff, like, it will open up you to new ideas of how to communicate, and also how things work. So whether it works between you or whether it works between them, the whole essence is that there are 5 love languages, and what does help with this is there is a free spreadsheet. Free questionnaire you can do, and both you and your partner should do it, and you learn what love language you is. This is free, as I said. You do not have to worry about anything else. So you read and you do what love languages you are. Then you learn what your partner does. So it's really good if you're open to communication, or even if you're not open to communication, start being open to communication, because that's essentially what the book is. It's communicating through different ways to make sure that you are communicating properly with your lover. But it's not just your lover. This can be worked with your friends. This can work with your parents. It can work with your children. Like, the person that's made him has actually written different books for quite a few people. Now, this is by Gary Chapman. As I said, I am a big believer in this book. Some people sort of roll their eyes at it. They go, I already know my love languages. You don't. Unless you've actually read the book and done the survey, you have no opinion on this sort of book, because it is one of those ones where if you actually focus on it, it will help you immensely. And I'm not lying there. I do think that is the truth. Like, me and my partner, we were having problems. Like, I'm not going to lie. And this book saved our relationship. And it's only because I was open to it. I was open to communicating with that stuff. Otherwise, I was hiding stuff before. I used to be ashamed of my money, and I used to hide that stuff from my partner. But because of this book, I opened up. I started to talk more. And this was one of the first books that I ever finished, like, ever. Used to be I would read a couple of books, but not really read the books. I was not a big reader. And this is one of those books that I listened to the audiobook, and I was like, wow, I can make this work. And I listened. That's the most important thing. I got a better understanding of communication between me, my partner, me, my mother, me, and myself. And you think love languages, you think it's just you and your partner. But it's not. It's actually about understanding how you communicate. How do you see things? And then by you internally working on yourself, going from there and going, right, well, I know this is what I need. This is what the other person needs. And if the other person is willing to work with you on your love language, then it will change your relationship forever. With anybody that you do it with. That's the whole point. Essential reading if you're working on your own self-help, especially if you're not happy in a relationship, especially if you are having issues with yourself, just wondering, what can I do for myself? It's a great starting point as well. Third book is The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. Now, Year of Yes is another one of these books that I didn't think I would actually like. I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be one of these sorts of books. Bit airy-fairy. It wasn't. It was funny. It was engaging. It was motivating. It was positivity in a book. It was crazy. And the author, I would strongly suggest getting the audiobook, listening to the author and listening to the passion in her voice as she tells you about her story, about her being in a depressive, she was, Shonda Rhimes is basically the lady that wrote and created hit series like Grey's Anatomy, Private Practice, How to Get Away with Murder, all these different series. And she explains everything, how she was at the height of her career and she was super depressed. She was super down. She, and then she decided to start saying yes to things. And the whole point of the book is learning to say yes to change, to accept change, and the steps that you can do to do that. There are a lot of books like this as well. So this is not the only book that is like The Year of Yes. But Year of Yes by Shonda, I came out and I felt amazing. I was like, wow, I can change. I can make things. And this is, this is after 3-4 years. This is after about 3 years of me reading books. So I was already at that point where I was working on myself. And it was like a light bulb. It was like a breath of fresh air. I'm going to be honest. Some of the self-help books I've read, they get very dreary. They get very boring. They're the same thing, you feel like. And this was like a completely overhaul. It was saying some of the same stuff, but in a completely fresh perspective. And it's one of those books that is just like, if you can listen to it, like, don't get me wrong, reading it is probably just as good, but hearing her enthusiasm, hearing her, she's not an actor. She's not an actress at all. She's a writer. And you get this amazing feeling from her. And the way that she talks and the passion. And honestly, when you see someone that's that passionate about what it is that they're talking about, it flows through you. One of the reasons I love there's a show I watch called The Man vs. Food, the original, with Adam Richmond. The reason I used to love that show, not because of all the food, because don't get me wrong, I love food, but his passion when he was talking about it. He wasn't a successful, he wasn't a cook, he wasn't anything like that. He was his own man. He even says it at the start, like, I'm no professional eater, but he had passion when he was talking about things. He was funny, he enjoyed it, and that brings you along for the ride. And it's the same with Shonda. It's like she brings you along with her ride. You hear everything. It's amazing. So, yes, Shonda, Year of Yes. Next book is Letters to You by Jazz Thornton. Now, I'm going to admit this book wasn't going to be in there. This is one of those books where it's told from a New Zealand perspective. And when it comes to self-help books, it's not the best self-help book. But there are some amazing parts in it. Letters to You is basically Jazz talks about her depression, talks about all the things that she's gone through. And she's gone through a lot. And you may know her as the Instagram girl or TikTok girl. But honestly, the reason I'm putting this book in there is there are certain letters that you can, when you're feeling down in life, you can literally flip to that part of the book, which I thought was amazing. And in that book, there is a letter, just one letter, to you as that person going through this thing. Now, the reason why I say it's not the best self-help book is because if you listen to them all in a row, a lot of them sound very similar. And they sort of like, it feels like when you're listening to it, you're hearing all of them at once. But I think this would work as a book, like a physical book. When you're feeling down, you're feeling, overwhelmed about anything. There are certain letters that are there to you from Jazz. And she's dealt with it, her own experience as well. If you are in a bad place, and let's be real, if you're needing self-help, there are times when you are in those bad places. So you need that help, you need that quick jolt. And that is the idea of the book, is if, say, for example, I was depressed about my weight, I wasn't losing weight, and I'm feeling really, really emotional and because of it, and potentially, other times you might feel suicidal. This book deals with that. This book goes, hey, read this letter. This is your first step. Then read this letter. Know that you're well enough. Know that you can get through this. Know that there are choices that are available to you. And as I said, it is not usually one of my top 10s. But if you're listening to this podcast and you are at a point where you know you need help, you feel that you're getting deeper and deeper into a hole, this kind of book, you can read that letter that is specific to you, and it's going to help you get through. And honestly, that's the whole point of why I'm doing this, is helping people get through, helping people realize that mental health is something that needs to be dealt with, but also physical health. And mental health is one of those things where if you're at the point where you think you can get help from a self-help book, then do it. Don't be silly. Do it. The next book is The Opening the Door to Your Heart by Ajahn Brahm, or anything by this author. So Ajahn Brahm is an Australian monk, which sounds funny, but basically he studied he studied under a Tibetan monk, and so he is funny. A lot of his books are quite easy to read. So this is one of the situations where I read about 4 or 5 of his books and actually read physically the books. And honestly, so glad I did. Some of them were short, quick stories, 1 or 2 pages, if that. And there's stories that he tells you. He makes you laugh, but he introduces to you the concept of Taoism. The reason I got into the way of my thinking of Buddhism and Taoism and realizing to live in the moment and all that sort of stuff, part of that was because of my mindfulness. Part of that was because of me going through a counselor and talking to that stuff. But being open to that stuff, a lot of that is thanks to Ajahn Brahm. Telling the stories in a nice way. Telling the stories so that I can go, oh, I understand that. That's funny. That makes me laugh. But I understand the principle that he's trying to show me as well. And honestly, that is the start of it. It's a great stepping stone. And I'm not saying you should be, a Tao Buddhist or anything like go spend years at the monastery. But to get you into the mindset of things like mindfulness, peace, being at peace with yourself, letting things go. It's because of his book that I was able to deal with the loss of my mother. I'm not going to lie. This is the truth. When I knew my mum was passing, one of the things in his book, he says, you have to give permission sometimes for the person to let them know that they can go. And in the situation where I was, my mother was very sick, and I knew she was holding on for me. And I told her, don't hold on. Go back, be with Dad. I wouldn't have been able to do that unless I had actually read his book. And he mentions giving permission to the person to say, hey, it's okay. I give you permission to die, which is hard to hear, very hard to hear. But it honestly helped me immensely. The next book is Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. Very similar to the Ajahn Brahm, but Jay Shetty. This book I read earlier this year, so this is a new book, and the amazing thing about this is it sort of starts off as a bit of a Tao book, but at the same time he keeps everything fresh. He knows that people aren't going to listen to him normally, as the Buddhist thing. And he comes at it from that perspective. He comes at it as a business person that's previously worked in business. Like, this is the sort of thing that he's aware of. And it is truly amazing, because it really, really sets home that what he's trying to say. And it sort of reinforces the stuff that Ajahn Brahm talks about, but goes a bit more deeper into like the actual thinking of how a monk thinks, how to let go of things, how to realize that it's okay to, do what you need to do, and to say the things you mean. It's okay to forgive. That's one of the biggest things I got from it, was forgiveness. And of course I've had forgiveness for all these other things, but I had, having forgiveness for myself for feeling, down, for feeling upset the ways that I did. But that's the sort of thing that it really covered off as well. So yeah, it's one of those books that is very, very powerful. It's a long book, I'm not going to lie. It is a very long book. But at the same time, it is pretty amazing. And close to the end of it, I got to admit, when I first started listening, I was like, I'm not going to like this one. It's not as good as the others that I've read, but I loved it at the end. Like, it's one of those ones that I was just like, this is really, really well thought out, really, really smart, and really, really interesting. So the next book is The Richest Man in Babylon by George Carlson. This book is... It's more about getting your head around money and how to save. And yeah, it was I got lucky that I was reading it in a place where I was able to actually focus, because if I hadn't, I would have probably fallen off. It is an old book. It is read in an old style. But at the same time, the principles behind the book about, how to become the richest man in Babylon, how to learn from the story, is a great way to learn how to get yourself out of debt, how to get yourself, in a happy place so that you can be happy, not just rich, but rich in life as well. Again, not a top 10, but a book that I think everyone should have a read if you're working on self-help, and especially if you are dealing with things like money. If money is one of those things that bothers you, that worries you, it's a great starter. I will have an actual money book as well to do with debt. I'll do a list of that, and I will try not to double up on some of these books as well. So I'll try to do a top 10 each time that I do these lists, and I will talk about how, so this is the self-help, but if I do an entrepreneurial, if I do if I do a business one, some of these books will be in addition to those, but I will try not to rank these as the part of the top 10. They'll be sort of like add-ons as, hey, this is a great book as well. So, for example, if I talk about communication, there's a couple of books I can talk about communication, but the first one I'm going to be mentioning will be 5 Love Languages, for example. But that's already in this book, because I think it works better as a self-help book, I think. The next 2 books I'm putting as one book, because they're quite small, and they're both by Spencer Johnson. And the first book is Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese? And then the second book is called Out of the Maze. I'll just double check that. Yes. They both run on the same principles. So if you read the first one, you should read the second one. They're both about 45 minutes to an hour maximum audio listening. So each. So for 2 hours, you can get the principles. I did not think I would get so much out of Who Moved My Cheese and Out of the Maze that I would out of a 2-hour thing. They are amazing. Very simple. They are, again, older books, but the principles are really, really helpful, especially for dealing with things like different people, different relationships, how to think, like how to rather than, or basically not thinking positive, but also not thinking negative. Like thinking can sometimes screw you around. Your own thoughts can screw you around. When you hear the story itself is very, very short. The explanation that comes after it is longer. And the interpretation of that story is much longer. And honestly, it is one of those ones where if you're prepared to listen to it and you're prepared to really focus on what they're trying to say and the different types of personalities and different types of people that they're talking about, you will start to change the type of person you are if you identify yourself as one of the 2 personalities that you don't appreciate. Honestly, it's and Out of the Maze is sort of following up on that and doubling down on it. It's one of those, they're really, really amazing books. Very, very short. The principles are very easy to pick up. And when you know it, you're like, oh my God, I wish I'd done this earlier. Like, I wish someone had told me about this book years ago. Years ago. Would have helped me change immensely. But I had to find it myself. And I did. So yeah, both those books. I'm counting as sort of like book 8. But again, they're not all technically ranked first or second. These are just ones that I think everyone should have a read of. They're really, really interesting. Next one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Atomic Habits is a really interesting book, talking about the different habits that people have and how to break a habit, how to form a habit, sort of the stuff around it, but also this guy has been through so much. You think you've been through a lot. This guy's been through so much, and his determination and his ability to build habits because of the way that he is, because of the things that the adversity he's gone through and what you can learn from him. It is something that I think if you're struggling to change your ways, listen to this book. Follow his processes. Change your habits, because that's what they are. Habits habits are what we make them. You know, so many times our values and our things are born of because of the environment that we live in, the environment that we create, and the environment we stay in. If you need to change something about yourself, you need to change your habits first. But that's easier said than done. This guy gives you clear ways of how to get through your habits, how to build your habits, make them better for you. And yes, it is a bit long. Yes, it is a bit hard to get into at the very, very start. But he grips you from the start. When you hear his story and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is he talking about? It's honestly, it's game changing. It's one of those ones where Atomic Habits is the guy has come and toured other places. Like he speaks as a motivational speaker now because of this. And yeah, his habits forming thing is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And the last book is it's by an actor, but also an entertainer. It's called Act Like a Success, Think Like a Success, and it's by Steve Harvey. And you might be like, Steve Harvey, what, the guy that forgot the guy mentioned the wrong thing on the beauty pageant? Yes, that's Steve Harvey. But read his book. Listen to his book. And honestly, I got so much out of it that I didn't know I would get. I did not think about him that way. I did not think that he had that things. And of course, over here in New Zealand, we don't get his talk show. I know in his talk show, people are like, wow, this guy's like really, really amazing. He's really motivational. He gets in your face with the stuff. He gets raw, but in a good way. He doesn't swear at you. He doesn't tell you all those things. Kind of like Sarah Knight. He's completely opposite of Sarah Knight. Like, he believes in God quite a lot. He faith is one of the things that he believes in quite a lot. Now, I am Greek Orthodox, but I'm not super faith at the moment. I believe in God and I believe in Jesus, but I'm not out there praying every day like other people. And he is very, very big on faith. But also, when you hear what he's done, where he's been, it will change your life. This dude is honestly super smart when it comes to this stuff. And I don't even think it's him reading it. It's some other guy reading the book. But I read it and it was like 11 hours. I read it in like 2 days. Like, I could not put it down. And it wasn't even that it was gripping. It was so well talked about. It was so, he engages with you. It made me go, I had to go to my partner, you need to read this book. And she read it and she was like, this is amazing. I was like, yes. Same as Year of Yes by Shonda. After I finished Year of Yes, I said, baby, you need to read this book. And she did. And she was like, this is amazing. And I was like, I know. So those are my top 10 books. I'll run through them again. So as I said, the number one was The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck by Sarah Knight. Also, any of her other books, her 3-4 other books, read them. Honestly, if you like her, you'll like them. There's The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Must read. Honestly, must read for everybody, I think. The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. Amazing book. Letters to You by Jazz Thompson. If you're in a dark, dark place, you need that book. If you can get the original, like the actual book, that would be better. Opening the Door to Your Heart, Ajahn Brahm. Anything by Ajahn Brahm will work. They're short, they're simple, and they bring the Buddhist principles to you. Think Like a Monk, Jay Shetty. If you like the Ajahn Brahm stuff, if you want to go a little bit further, a little bit deeper, go to Think Like a Monk, Jay Shetty. Trust me, you will enjoy it. The Richest Man in Babylon, George Clason, sorry. I think this is a book that, as I said, some of these books aren't my top 10. These are just ones that I think are great starters for people. This is one of those books. As I said, if you're dealing with money stuff, you want to know how to be a better person with money. That is one of those things that to read. The Richest Man in Babylon. Who Moved My Cheese / Out of the Maze. Both of those books by Spencer Johnson. Both of those books, read. And do it one after the other. Read Who Moved My Cheese, then read Out of the Maze. And it will just help you so much. Especially when you identify the person that you are. So actually do the homework. Like read or listen to it and just get it into your head. Think how they're thinking. Atomic Habits, James Clear. And then finally, Act Like a Success, Think Like a Success. That is in my top 10. That is in my top 10. I can't say enough about these books. I'll probably do another 10 self-help books further down the road. I don't know what I'll do next week. I might do, or the week after, I might do the entrepreneurial books. I might do general books. I might even do a top 10 books of all time, my favourite books at some point. But for now, I'm going to go bit by bit by bit. And I hope you read them. If you do, contact me. Contact me. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know, was I right? Was I wrong? Did it help you? Did it not help you? Do you have recommendations for me? I will try anything, honestly. I could have put something like Jordan B. Peterson, 12 Rules of Life. I read those as well, but I found it very hard to read. I found it very hard to listen to. It's very deep. I like something a little bit simple to start off with. But honestly, contact me, doncostas@gmail.com. That's DONCOSTAS@gmail.com. That'll do it for this episode, but thank you very much for listening, and I hope everyone has a fantastic day. I love you guys as always, and as always, good luck.